Let's go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zephyr's Adjusted for Risk podcast from the shores of Lake Tahoe. We talk a lot on this podcast about the evolution of the wealth management space, and that evolution, the primary driver of it has been technology. There's no way around it. Technology is driving the evolution of the space, and not only this space, but in a lot of different spaces in industries that we use in our daily lives. It's important that financial advisors accept this evolution as it can make practices more efficient and help them, with things like compliance. Today, I have a fantastic guest on to help us gain a better understanding of some of the great innovations out there and that is happening in this space. But first, today's episode is sponsored by the award winning Zephyr, which helps advisors, wealth managers, financial analysts, and investment professionals make more informed investment decisions. So, with that, I'd like to give a warm welcome to Kurt Long. Kurt is the CEO and co founder of BUNKR. Kurt is a successful entrepreneur with over 25 years of starting, growing, and building financially successful information security and privacy businesses. Kurt is the executive director of the Long Family Force of Good Foundation, which focuses exclusively on supporting not for profits dedicated to improving the mental health of children and families. Kurt is also the co-founder and CEO of BUNKR. Here's just a few companies Kurt has founded. Um, Protect Healthcare Systems, holding over 250 million patient records around the world. Protect companies holding over $1 trillion in assets, including global banks, wealth advisors, and other financial services related businesses. And finally, companies that Kurt founded or formally advised in the early stages have been valued at well over $1 billion. Great history there, Kurt, but I'm sure that's just a little bit about it. First of all, thank you so much for coming on. It's such an honor to have you on. Can you please tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me on. I thought that was a pretty good summary of the career highlights. I did start out the Space Center, which was a great start to my life. I've been married for a long time. I think that's an important part of it. I've been married for over, I think coming up on 39 years. I have 2 adult sons that are great sons and 2 granddaughters, love to travel the world. Always have been a sports-oriented person, and sometimes I think my entrepreneurship starts with feeling good about myself physically, and then that kind of flows through to how I think about business. But those are things that are kind of outside the lines, if you will, Ryan, but that's a little bit more.
No, that's fantastic. I love that saying that you feel good about yourself, like physically and mentally, and that translates into your professional ambitions. I think that's fantastic and really very important, right? In all aspects of life.
Yeah, I
But
mean, I can't emphasize it enough. It's like get physically well, and then I call it like I sometimes call it clean, like get your mind cleaned up, and now
yeah,
I'm ready to go drive an initiative. Go ahead, Ryan.
no, that's fantastic. I love it. So, how are current trends in the wealth management space impacting the way financial advisors partner with their clients?
It's been a really interesting journey to watch the industry change and unfold. And at Fair Warning, we had some of the world's largest wealth management firms as customers, and we helped secure their data.
Mhm.
Um, and so I started following that space maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago. And when you look at where we were to compared where we are today, the industry, meaning the clients, expect way more what I might even call intimacy, way more
Mhm.
dedication, personal focus, and instantaneous communication. And that provides advisors an opportunity to have closer relationships than ever before. It gives them an opportunity to provide value more than ever before. And in a lot of cases, this is happening over instant messengers of some kind. And a lot of times that's driven by, let's just say, millennials.
Mhm.
And a lot of times we'll say, oh, millennials this, millennials that. And this way, it's a very positive thing. I think we're seeing millennials break through and become successful across the board, entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
professional, athletes, whatever it is they are. And they've incorporated instant messaging technology into their life, and they expect their advisors to use that. And now advisors, some it might come to naturally, others it might be a little bit of work, but they're
Mhm.
having to come to grips with that. And having a relationship with the client might not want to get on the phone as much, and the client might want instantaneous response, or at least consistent response. And I think overall that is a positive dynamic for small and medium-sized wealth management
Mhm.
advisors in particular. But at the macro level, that's kind of an interesting observation. That's kind of a combination of technology and generational behaviors.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Great. I'm glad you mentioned that about, communication and with a younger generation of clients. It's such a shift from the older generation of investors and we're starting to, I'm 46 and now I'm expecting, data communication, on demand at the tip of my fingers, right? And younger client, if I am that younger generation of clients definitely is expecting that fluidness of communication like you talked about.
Yes. Would you like me to
So,
comment on that, or keep going?
no, go ahead.
Well, just a little follow on to that is, we have various apps that, as a customer to many businesses, including wealth management, that we're encouraged to use apps. And I think that's positive. So I want to be really, really clear. It's great to have online access to our financial information and even apps that add value. But I think it only goes so far. And that whether it's because a client is busy, or just simply doesn't have the time to go in and learn the app, sometimes they want that personal interaction. And I think it's required to add value, because if you lose them off the app and you're not communicating with them personally, you've kind of got a lost client.
Very good point. You can't leverage technology for everything. There's still that face-to-face interaction that still needs to be there, right? And that personalization. So you talk about apps and different ways of communicating and, chatting and so on. That probably to some people like regulators and compliance people kind of like sound the alarm bells a little bit. Can you describe a use case to show why it's important for financial advisors to, store and archive their communications with clients and maybe how can they do that so they can keep the regulators and compliance in check?
Yeah, this is a sticky issue that's changed in the last 2 to 3 years. And we all know that people of all ages, but in particular, uh, a younger generation, are using apps like WhatsApp and Signal, Snapchat, Telegram, just to name a few, even text messages. And those have moved to what's called end-to-end encryption, where there's no ability for law enforcement or an SEC regulator to step in and do a discovery process on the associated messages, what in the industry is called record keeping. Um, and we want this. We want the SEC to regulate this, because, I mean, if you are using an end-to-end encrypted app that doesn't provide for inspection under subpoena or some type of, it's just perfect for insider trading. So for example, Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX, I think we all followed that. I don't think I have to explain too much about SBF and FTX, but I mean, he was doing all of his communications on Signal. And then even as he was under custody at his parents' home in Palo Alto, he continued to use Signal, which It's just for law enforcement and the SEC, they have to look at that and say, well, what are you doing? You're suspected of fraud. And here's something you don't think of. If you have a bad actor that's using an encrypted messenger without support for record keeping, if you're affiliated with that person, like I have a personal friend who's a good personal friend, someone I consider very honest. He was using one of these messaging apps, and he wound up unknowingly communicating, unknowingly meaning the person he's communicating with was accused of insider trading. And the FBI raided my friend's house because he was caught up in the dragnet of, if you will, and they confiscated all of his computers and accessories and phones. They were using disappearing messages so that my friend really couldn't defend himself to say, no, the nature of my communications was not insider trading. I was working with him on legitimate, well, he couldn't produce evidence for that. So while he was not indicted, he was named in the indictment of the insider trading, who did get convicted. And my good friend lost his job of 22 years over it because it brought about scrutiny. So that's on the personal use side.
Yeah.
Just if I'm an advisor, I'd be very careful. And I'm talking about just personally, not even for the firm's sake, not for regular, personal. Because if you're using one of those messengers and you're interacting, then whether it's the SEC or the FBI, they have to take a broad scope and say, well, we really don't know the contents. Why? Then you can get caught up unknowingly. Then shifting just a little bit, Ryan, and I'll touch on it and see where you want to go. The SEC has acknowledged this and come out and had enforcement actions with a new director of enforcement, and has fined the firms that allow advisors to use the messengers. They've fined them $2 billion in total, and have taken a very aggressive posture about further enforcement and
Mhm.
encouraging firms to self-report. In other words, it's the intimidation, hey, you don't want me to come knocking at your door. You're better off if you self-report now. So those are some of the dynamics, Ryan, of what's going on with the messengers.
Yeah, that's great. You open by saying there's a great opportunity, and it's good that, these millennials and younger clients are, bringing awareness to these different applications to help us communicate. But it's important that financial advisors, really cover themselves, and we could say, cover their backside, right? Um,
Mhm.
by keeping track of all their communications. And, and you said record keeping, it might sound like, yeah, of course we do that. But when it talks about, messaging, instant messaging, it's a little bit different game than just archiving an email, right? Or keeping
Yeah,
it
so
in.
you actually you're making a very good point that I touched on but didn't address in your previous question. So specifically with messengers, and emails considered a messenger, it's obviously not a secure messenger. But with messengers, they're either designed to archive the materials that are appropriate for records keeping as defined by the SEC or FINRA,
Mhm.
or they're not. You can put some of that burden on yourself. In other words, if I were using something, well, I better keep track of things. I think that's a big burden to put upon yourself. I'm not sure how the SEC is going to look at that, but it would be better if you were to use a messenger that you knew was appropriate for use with record keeping in the SEC, and that you didn't have to put so much of a personal burden, and you would need to look to your IT or security department, whatever is appropriate, your wealth management firm.
Yeah. I guess to me, why even take that on when you only have so many hours in a day? The last thing you want to do is have to track that, right? Um, and I
Yeah,
think,
I'd want to work on the relationships with the
yeah,
customers personally. You want your energy directed and your focus and your attention to your clients and adding value for them, as opposed to keeping track of these mundane things.
and that's exactly what we're seeing, more on the investment management side is more and more financial advisors are, outsourcing their investment management because it's just mundane. They're not getting paid. It's not adding value to sit behind, their computer watching daily market moves and trying to
Yes.
pick it's just not worth their time. Like you said, it's so much more important to build relationships and in
Yes.
this uh, age of financial services.
Yes.
And I think you covered this, but how does secure like file storage, secure messaging, and password management help enhance the client experience? We always talk about enhancing the client experience. I don't care what industry it's in; it's so important. And what is the opportunity for advisors when using these type of services?
Um, so I think that's a good question. I'm in the security, so I think it's a great question, right? And it is, there's an opportunity there as well. And I think as as advisors and wealth management firms, you kind of have this line of, here's our systems, here's what we provide. And on the other side of the line, it's like, that's the customer's problem, if you will. But the reality of it is when the customer has a security problem, you've got a distracted customer, a frustrated customer, someone who's where the relationship is going to be more difficult. So when we look to say, well, do where does the public, where does the advisor's customer get into trouble with security and fraud? Well, to be frank, it's like imposter fraud is huge. And imposter fraud could be anything from email phishing to literally like fake kidnapping today, where there's a synthesized voice that says, we have your granddaughter in our custody. Anytime you're using a messaging app that allows for imposter-based fraud, your customer is you're putting your customer in kind of a sense of being at risk to all
Mhm.
kinds of different to fraud schemes. And that can include literally taking all of their money, as we've all read the articles. A couple of other quickly is like sending secure documents. We know that needs to be done securely. There needs to be secure storage for organization so that if I'm, it's really anybody, but in particular, aging parents or
Mhm.
aging persons really need a central place for their passwords. They need a central place for the wills, their trusts, their financial documents. They need a central place for the personal information. So in the event someone passes, the family has easy access. Um,
Mhm.
and there's more than one example I can give you of where that didn't happen. And then the last piece is kind of passwords. We all know that reused passwords and easy passwords are the hugest vulnerability. So if you can get a solution that puts these things together, that's SEC compliant, and get them to your customer, you're putting them in a position to succeed and give more of their mental attention to you as the advisor.
Kurt, you opened by talking about how this relationship, this industry is getting so much more intimate between the financial advisor, the wealth manager, and the client. And you brought up a really good point with all of this and enhancing the client experience. A financial advisor is, in a way, kind of the the central point of a person's all financial affairs, whether it's with the trust accountant or the trust attorney, the accountant, and they have to be so much more in tune with everyone's affairs, their clients' affairs, and it is getting so much more intimate. It's not just about buying and selling the best stock or the worst stock now. It is about knowing what else is going on in their life, where are their documents if something happens to them, helping their loved ones find those relationships. It's such a different industry than what it was 15 years ago, and that's really how you can set yourself apart.
Look, I think that there's some great firms out there that we can name that are traditional firms, the Vanguards and the Merrills. These are really, really good firms, and they have great security and great processes. But you've got RIAs coming onto the scene, just really growing so fast, and they've in a lot of cases they've raised the bar to say, hey, I'm a fiduciary, I have to act in your best interest. But they're the really good ones. And I've had, I've dealt with good ones and I've dealt with not good ones. The really good ones really are, they're going to compete with your lawyer as the most important third party in your family. And they, at their best, they don't know everything about you and they shouldn't, but they might even know the personal dynamics within your family, between your children, with grandchildren.
Mhm.
And they're sensitive, and let alone your elderly parents. And like a lot of people get that middle condition, which is, hey, I'm the parent to my parents and I'm the parent to these kids. I've got a lot of responsibility. And when they can do that, when they have the systems around them that make it easy for them to know their client, like mine is fantastic at that, then everything becomes easier and more seamless and more trustworthy between the advisor and the client. And that's kind of like, gosh, I'm stopping just, they're not part of the family, but they're right on the edge of really acting in your best interest as they're legally obliged, and then acting in the best interest of the entire ecosystem around you. Well, that's a pretty good deal, if you're the customer.
They should be in that circle of trust, right? And have not access to everything, but help you, like if you do need a attorney or a good accountant, and keep all that stuff secure, right?
Yes.
Keep it all in a
Yes.
secure place and to help them, the client.
Yes. Yes. In one secure place, it's like Carnegie said, put all your eggs in one basket and protect that basket, and that's the idea there of the security and privacy around the most important information. If you have it scattered out all over the place, not only is that more unorganized, it's actually less secure because there's more threat vectors
Yeah.
to your information, the more places it's dispersed across. So just geeking out a little bit as an information security professional, the thing that I'm always looking to do is eliminate the threat vectors, just get rid of them. And then you're just down to well-known threat vectors of where the information is and how can it be attacked. And we know what those are. And one last time, just contrast that with my information is scattered out all over the place and people have all these different attack vectors to steal what's mine. That's kind of driving it home from an information security point of view.
That's fantastic. And to tie it back to investment management, you want to reduce the risks, right? Eliminate a lot of
Yes,
the risks out there.
that's right.
It's like that. So, you mentioned, and this kind of goes along with some of the scams that are out there, but deep fakes. Deep fakes have
Yes,
been in the news a lot. Can you briefly explain what it is and why it's important for
sure.
advisors to understand it and help their clients understand?
Yeah, so I've been talking about this for a few years. And then here it is. In recent times, I've had the interviewer has been a victim of a deep fake in like 3 cases in a row. So Ryan, you're the first one that has, I don't know if you have been or not. And I'm
I
like,
don't think so, no.
wow, when the people interviewing me have all been hit by a deep fake, it must be a thing. And that's the idea. Let's just start with voice because that's the most common. If they can if let's just say cyber criminals, dark web can capture your voice, even a few seconds of your voice, they can synthesize that using artificial intelligence to reproduce your voice consistently enough to fool someone who's not on their best game. So
Mm,
we saw these kinds of fakes start out in corporate America. And the first story I heard was one of the largest automobile manufacturers in Europe. Their CEO went on a ski trip, and the bad guys must have known because they called up the CFO and had a voice synthesis fake of the CEO saying, let's say the CFO's name is Jeff. Jeff, I'm calling you from Chamonix in France here, but I have an emergency situation and I need you to transfer money to this account from this automobile manufacturer.
mm,
Well, they did it twice. And then the third time, they were like, okay,
Yeah.
they looked into it, and it was the first reasonably well-known case of a deep fake voice. Now what's happened is the same technology, as an example, is being applied to families. And so if I can get a snippet of your child's voice, and you could say, well, how do they get that? Well, they can get that off social media. There's a claim that when you get a phone call and you say, who is it? Who is it? There's a claim that that's even a way to capture your voice. But let's just say that, so I, getting a little defensive, don't even talk, when you pick the phone up sometimes, like, depending on how paranoid I am in that moment. But whether it's social media, they can get a synthesized sense of your voice. And so it's like fake kidnapping. They go, to be forthright, they a lot of times go after the grandparents,
Hmm.
because the grandparents have more idle time. They're more apt to overreact. They have money, and they'll say your grandchild, this is Mary, or whatever the granddaughter's name is, and she speaks, and then they cut them off, and they try to get the grandmother to wire money, and the reasonably commonly known fight back against that is to have a family secret code word. But that would be one example. A second example is all kinds of online frauds that attack you through these different, again, like the messengers, and whether it's WhatsApp, wherever it might be, text messaging, the writing from AI is getting better and better. So there's not missing, just terrible grammar as much anymore. So they're able to scale out better writing and have more personalized writing in these phishing attacks. Those are two examples.
That's fantastic. Kurt, great information. You obviously, I said at the open, you're the co-founder and CEO of BUNKR,
Mhm.
and you have a ton of knowledge in the security space and experience. How is your team at BUNKR addressing these trends? Give us a little bit of background on BUNKR and what opportunities in the wealth management space do you see, and what is your team working on moving forward?
Sure. Just to give a quick origin story, is we sold Fair Warning. The entire family worked within Fair Warning really successfully. We had a Tomo Brava owns a company called Improvata, and Improvata bought us, and love the firm, and Fair Warning lives on today. But we were not working at the time because we had just sold the company. COVID hits, and we start using all the tools that you would normally use. We weren't as busy, and we were all at home, and you realize, like, oh my goodness, we are using tools like email and text and cloud storage that really isn't protected well at all, and they're very vulnerable to attacks of all kinds. And the password managers are expensive, and they're more built for corporate use today than they are for personal use, and they're complicated. And so, to be forthright with you, we first built a platform that we would love to use as a family, that was easy to use, and that had all the lessons learned from privacy and security that we have had along the way. And then we began offering that to friends and extended family, and people loved it. We realized that there was the messenger problem was a big problem in healthcare and in finance, where they didn't do the record keeping,
Yeah.
and just kind of recognize, like, okay, this is a really cool opportunity, and let's build that out. So we've put all that together in a single app, bank level security, instant messenger ease, includes a password manager, includes secure cloud storage, and now people are using it. I believe it's 33 countries around the world, all different kinds of people, from athletes to accountants to financial advisors to entrepreneurs. It's a great app to travel with. And the vision was just to make it as simple and secure as possible while complying, so that people could focus on their life and the people that they love, instead of just worried about all this technology stuff that drives you nuts. That's basically what we're working on, Ryan. It's going
Fantastic.
really well. Yep.
No, that's perfect, and such a needed needed app and service and product, because with everything out there and people's lives getting more complex, like you said, I hate to say it, you're gonna hate this, Kurt, but I work from home, but I've got my password. My passwords
Yeah,
aren't that,
sure.
and Forma's not gonna like that I just said that either. But
Yeah. Well, 99 cents, Ryan. Go to the App Store, Bunker, 99 cents. And we're making that pricing. We're in a fortunate position. We haven't had to raise capital because of our past financial successes. And the vision here, my belief in my heart and soul is like every person on earth deserves bank level security. And so we've made it affordable. We want to drive it out. And whether you're in you're in a country in the Middle East, you're in Europe, you're in the UK or in the United States, all of us on the planet deserve our privacy. All of us deserve our security. So I love the idea that it's like this 99 cents that every single person on earth can afford. And we want to, we think that can be our, some of the contribution that we make.
I love it. That's fantastic. And we're seeing that in the wealth management space with all these apps that are making it so much cheaper and affordable for people to invest. Whereas before, you had to have, at least $100,000 to make it. Now people can invest in, Robinhood and different apps.
Yes. Yes.
A couple minutes here, real quickly. As you know, I like to end with a fun story. So it's fun
Yeah.
story time. Anything interesting going on recently?
Well, we're just getting back from an extended trip to South America. That's been a travel destination we've wanted to invest more in, and so we went through Chile and Patagonia, Buenos Aires and Santiago, and some other places. And it was really exciting to see the energy of people, particularly in Argentina. There's an entrepreneurial energy in Argentina, and clearly they're going through some political change. And so all I would do is ask them, what do you think of your new political leader? Because I have a belief that I don't know local politics. And I think it's really hard to come into someplace and tell somebody. And overall, they're very, very excited about their new leader. They're very hopeful. I know that he's facing, various criticisms, but the energy level was unbelievable. And they were quoting all of these things about their economy and about concepts that you would think would be only in America. I was like, where are you getting your information? Like, we're in a place called Iguazu Falls, it is literally rainforest, dirt road territory.
Mhm.
And we were with guides who are telling you about all the political philosophies. And there's like, oh no, there's this guy, Joe Rogan. And I listen to Joe Rogan all the time. And that's where I get most of my information. And then I go to YouTube and I get a lot of other information. But they knew the podcasters, they knew, I would say, YouTube more than social media. They're not quite ready to trust X. They're not really getting their info from Instagram. It's really the podcasters and YouTube. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is pretty cool that one person, whatever you think of Joe Rogan, the fact is that one person can have such a profound influence in the world. I hope Joe's out there trying to tell the truth to the world, and people are identifying with that.
That is awesome. Maybe, Kurt, with you on the Star Power, maybe you'll be traveling and oh, did you hear adjusted for risk? What they
Yeah, I hope so.
But Kurt, that's a great story. And it's interesting. That's what we're seeing on our side too, is so many more people are getting their information. I don't know, care what information, stock tips or whatever, from YouTube. It is such
Yes.
a powerful tool now. And, that's where financial advisors can leverage is, putting themselves out there, getting to be known on YouTube, because that's where younger clients, they're searching. That's where they're searching for their information.
I really have looked at this really hard over the years, this idea of trust and truth. And we all know we live in a world of limited trust, maybe more than ever before in a lifetime, certainly in my lifetime, of limited trust. And we're all searching for truth. And so there's an inherent skepticism with any new product, with any new company. And we prematurely declared that short form formats were the winners. And what we've discovered is that long form conversations, long form videos, and whether that's 8 minutes or an hour and a half, gives everybody a chance to connect with an audience. And if you get to listen to a person for long enough, you're going to get a pretty good sense of who that person is and are they trustworthy. And that we believe that in BUNKR. It's one of the reasons I'm on this podcast today is we know that the world makes all kinds of claims, and BUNKR is making claims about being secure. And we have no problem being open and transparent, and hopefully people getting to know a little bit about who we are. And I really hope your wealth advisor audience takes advantage of that to let people know who they are as a person and that they're trustworthy.
You're exactly right. Well, Kurt, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to have you on. It was such a fun conversation, some great insight. I really appreciate it. Where can people find more information about BUNKR?
Just BUNKR.life
Okay.
is the website. And then we're on X and Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn, just Kurt Long on LinkedIn. And I'm the Kurt Long that's kite surfing in the banner page.
Awesome.
So I'm not gonna,
Very,
yeah, hold
very
on to that.
cool. Very
Okay.
cool. Well, we will put that website in our show notes also so
Yeah.
people have access to. But thank you everyone for listening to this episode of Zephyr's Adjusted for Risk podcast. You can watch all of our podcasts on the Adjusted for Risk YouTube channel, as well as on Spotify and iHeartRadio. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you very much.
Mhm.